The Wilds Files is an immigration law podcast. The content shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organization or law firm. Listeners should seek the counsel of a qualified attorney to address specific legal concerns. By listening, you acknowledge that the hosts and guests are not providing professional or personalized legal advice. Welcome to the Wilds Files. The files are open.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Wilds Files, your go-to podcast for everything related to U.S. immigration law. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Wilds, and we're pleased to have you back. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Talia Heller from our litigation and family department. Well, I guess you're actually kind of a jack of all trades, right?
Yep, I'm in all of them.
Yeah, we do everything related to U.S. immigration in our firm, but we are kind of separated into different teams. Some people work specifically in some teams, but Talia is one of the lucky ones that gets to work across the board. So welcome, Talia.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a thrill and an honor.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. Sorry about the Celsius. It's been a long day. It's been crazy out there, as you can imagine. Things are getting busier, but you can always use a pick-me-up. Celsius, if you see this, feel free to give us a call. That's my plug for the day. Anyways, Talia, welcome. Why don't you start by telling all of our viewers and I guess our listeners your name?
Talia Heller. I'm from Miami, Florida. I work out of the New York office, and I've been a barred attorney for about a year now, but I've been at Wilds and Weinberg for about 2 years.
Was that as an intern?
I was a law clerk once I graduated law school, and then I took the bar in New York, passed, thank God. Took the bar in Florida, passed, thank God. And now I'm a full-blown attorney. Even though, you know, it's important to know for any aspiring immigration attorneys out there that immigration is federal law, so you only need one bar passing, right?
That is a good point. In most areas of law, you need to be admitted in the state that you're practicing. So if you're doing criminal law, personal injury, tort, real estate, whatever it may be, immigration is one of those unique areas. It's federal. We're only practicing federal law. Of course, there's overlaps sometimes, particularly when we're dealing with clients with certain, let's just say, criminal convictions. But when we're representing the clients, we're representing them before the federal government. So that is a good point. We have some of our lawyers are barred in New Mexico, Idaho. It doesn't really matter. They're able to represent them well. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, it takes a very special and bizarre person to do more than one bar if you don't have to.
It's true. I'm barred in a couple states also, but yeah. Where'd you go to law school?
I went to Cardozo Law in New York City.
Heard of it before.
Yeah, I think you.
Yeah, I went there as well. You probably know this already, but my grandfather taught there for I think 32 or 33 years. My dad's going to correct me after this on that. But my dad and my mom met in his class when they were students there. Fast forward a bunch of years, my father took over my grandfather's class, and me and my sister ended up taking that class together.
That is so funny.
Yeah, it was great. We had to do a pass-fail, as you can imagine, but I did get the best grade in the class. So proud of that. Anyways, what do you like about immigration law?
I always loved other cultures, other places, and people who are different from me. And immigration has kind of all of that plus more. It's really intricate law, which I don't think I knew the extent of.
Yeah, it gets super complicated.
Yeah. So it's just been really challenging, but it's really fun and interesting and meaningful to help people who are either coming to us from a place of like full, just looking to work, really, looking to expand their culture, their horizons, or people coming to us in a really desperate situation who really need help, who want to be here, who are fleeing a desperate and horrible situation in their country. So it really runs the gamut. It's been really interesting.
I always tell people we're in a unique situation where we're dealing with people when they're at the highest point in their life. So maybe they're super famous and they're coming here to tour or to perform, or they're growing a company or whatever it may be. But we're also dealing with people who are at very low points in their life. Maybe they're afraid to go home. Maybe they faced persecution back home and they need to stay here. and if not, the could be really severe for them. So it's definitely an interesting area from that perspective. And you mentioned something which is very interesting about the intricacy of immigration law. It's one of those areas of law that's just constantly changing. So especially nowadays with the new administration, it's like every hour there's something new. It's almost impossible to keep up. But there are other areas of law where it's very stagnant. You're doing the same thing that people were doing 65, 70 years ago. Now we're doing similar stuff as well, but it's constantly changing in the way that we do it and the way and then how we do it, which is great.
Yeah.
So good. I'm glad that you enjoy it. Now, one thing I wanted to do with you while I have you here is we went through ChatGPT and we asked for some myths about immigration law in general. And I thought this would be a good one for you to talk about, given that you work in the litigation team and as part of our family team, representing individuals and spouses and people going for certain benefits. So one of the myths here says, myth, marriage to a U.S. citizen guarantees lawful status. What do you think?
I don't think anything is guaranteed in this life, especially not in U.S. immigration anymore.
Well, can't a lot of people, they think, if you marry an American, you automatically get a green card.
No, you have to go through a whole vetting process. You can either adjust once you're in the country from another lawful status. First of all, you have to have entered lawfully. If you don't, there's a whole host of issues with that. But you can either adjust from whatever lawful status you entered on once you're in the country, or you can have your spouse petition you from abroad.
So there's two ways to get the green card. And just for our viewers out there, we're specifically talking about marriages, again, to a U.S. citizen. Obviously, if you're married to a lawful permanent resident or you're married to a non-citizen, that's very different. But if you're married to a U.S. citizen, so hypothetically, I'm from the United Kingdom and I marry a U.S. citizen, there's two ways to get it, either in the United States or abroad. Oh, that's great. That's good to know, because a lot of people, they think they have to be here to get the green card, which is not true. Or a lot of people think they need to kind of wait on this line and ultimately come in with the green card, which is also not true. There are certain ways to do it both ways.
And just talking about waiting online, I will say there's no super quick fix to anything, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think anything happens overnight in U.S. immigration.
No, I think that's also one of the other myths, and that's actually on here as well, is that people think, you get married, you get a green card the next day, you come on in, and people are taking advantage of the system that way, but it's not true. A marriage case, depending on if you're doing it here versus abroad, it can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of years. And most of the time it's the latter. We're seeing new trends with cases going relatively quickly nowadays domestically, but abroad they're still taking at least 1.5 to 2 years to even be called in for that interview, where they have to show, why don't you tell us what they have to show at the interview, either here or abroad? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the interview is super fun. Generally, could be, possibly, maybe it's not the best day of your life. It's probably not as fun as your wedding day, but you can look at it as an opportunity to meet someone new and explain how you fell in love with your spouse and your relationship. But really, it is the government determining whether you entered into your marriage for, love, for real reasons, in good faith, or whether you did it for immigration benefits, which is a big no-no.
Yeah, of course. The government takes that very seriously, as you can imagine.
So they want to know whether, how you guys met, how your relationship progressed, but they also need to make sure that the person applying for this adjustment of status or for their, green card from abroad is eligible for that benefit, so that they don't have any things in their record that would make them inadmissible or ineligible for this.
Okay. And inadmissible, it's a kind of a long word, but just not being able to be admitted to the U.S., so not being able to be entered in or returned to. Okay. You mentioned about proving that the marriage is legitimate. Now, we term that as the bona fides or the evidence of the relationship. But why don't you tell us, how do you actually prove that a marriage is legitimate? Can I just say, I've been married for 8 years. Can I just say that I love my wife? And
brag.
Well, I got 2 kids and one on the way to show for it as well. But can I just say I love my wife and she loves me? Or how do we prove?
Listen,
how do
you should
prove?
say that every day, and you should make sure she hears it. But I don't think it's going to be persuasive.
She's going to get me in trouble back home.
I don't think it's going to be persuasive to a U.S. immigration officer, just because they're a real person. They see so many cases every single day, and they see a ton of couples, all different. So you kind of want to make it as, I say, you want to make it as easy as possible. So we like to keep documentation of all of this love, which is great and might not be able to be explained in words, but should be able to be demonstrated in the ways that the government can understand it. And that usually looks like living together and having your finances commingled, like sharing a bank account
Right.
or filing your taxes together,
So-
having each other on insurance. and
So
stuff
what,
like
what
that.
you're saying basically in a nutshell is that the government wants to see third-party proof of the
Yeah.
relationship, right?
Yeah,
They
that's a
don't
good way to
believe
put it.
what he says or she says, because anybody can say, I love her, she loves me. But they want to see that you're spending your life together.
Yeah.
They want to see on paper that you're sharing a bank account.
That you're holding yourself out to be a couple in the real world, and it's not just,
Right.
something only you two know.
Right. I think that's great. And I think it's also worth mentioning that not every couple will have every piece of evidence. But the immigration practitioners, the officers, particularly, are very good at ultimately determining whether it's real or not based on what they're given. So, you might have one couple, by the way, the best proof of relationship that the government appreciates to see is usually a child and
Makes
what
sense.
you mentioned this before, the cohabitation, the fact that you're actually living together. Are you on the same lease? Are you on the same deed? And if you're abroad, did you spend time together abroad? They want to see the trips. Did the spouse visit you? How long did they stay?
Yeah.
Did they meet your family out there? These are all the different types of things that they want to see in order to improve the relationship.
Yeah, it's like just imagine that the U.S. immigration officer is looking for all the gossip, wants to know all the fun details about your relationship.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily your best friend, but you want to show them just all the facets of your relationship so that they know that you entered into it for good reasons.
Right. So then, I mean, obviously there's more details to it, and we're not
Yeah.
going to go over the entire
Right, every case is
immigration
different.
laws.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is based on what's called Section 245 of the Immigration Nationality Act, which relates to what's called adjustment of status. That's when you're in the United States, you're adjusting your status. And if you're doing it abroad, it's called consular processing. There's a lot of little steps and details that people often miss. But the gist of it is, or what you're saying is that you can't just get a green card. That's a myth. You don't just marry someone, you get a green card. You have to prove that the relationship was legitimately entered into. You have to go to an interview. You have to
Yeah.
provide them with documents. Is that right?
Yeah, I wish it was easy as 1, 2, 3, but
Yeah.
it's sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right, what makes sense. And there's these forms that you always have to fill out. And
All the forms, all the fees.
Yeah, and they make them look user-friendly or easy to digest after the fact, kind of like a tax return.
Yeah.
It's like I would have no idea how to fill out a tax return, but when I look at it after, it all makes sense to me.
Right.
So I find the same thing with the immigration forms is that unless you know how to fill them out, you
Yeah.
can easily make a mistake. And what we're doing a lot of times, unfortunately, is fixing people's mistakes. And mistakes can be catastrophic. They can knock you out of the ballpark. Sometimes, usually you get a couple of chances if you really, screw something up. But a really big screw up can be that's it. You're done and dusted. You're not getting the green card. You're not getting back into the U.S., whatever it may be. So people need to be extra careful with that.
Yeah, and without an immigration attorney, you might not know what mistake is a big one and what mistake is a massive one that you really need to work to correct.
Yeah. And depending on other mistakes you made in your life, maybe an immigration violation or a criminal violation or a civil violation, there are certain waivers that you're eligible to get. So, even certain mistakes, even bad ones could be fixed. Now, that's a whole episode in its own right.
Yeah.
So we're not going to jump into some of those waivers of inadmissibility and whatnot. But it is worth mentioning that just because, you screwed up at some point in your life doesn't mean that you haven't been rehabilitated, doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to come to the United States. What I always my father always says, this is family reunification is the bedrock of our society. America's built on Judeo-Christian values, and that's based on familial values. We appreciate the family, and what's more important than your spouse? So the government knows that. It's just that they have to do this vetting process because they need to make sure that no one's taking advantage. They need to make sure that they understand who's coming into the country, how and why. And we have to respect that too. We have to respect what the government does for almost everything, but particularly with marriage cases because there is a lot of fraud out there. Don't kid yourself. There is a lot of fraud. There are people taking advantage, which is part of the reason why we as lawyers, we won't take on a case unless we're convinced that the relationship is legitimate as well, because we wouldn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're representing something shady. So, we'll always meet with the couple, both of them. We want to see both spouses, and it could be husband, wife, husband, whatever it may be. The government represents all marriages as long as it's a legitimate marriage. But we won't take the case unless we're convinced. We've seen the paperwork ourselves because there's just too much fraud, and especially nowadays, they're really going after people.
Yeah, and it's so much effort to do this fraud. I have to say, I'm always really surprised that it happens because it's really so much work.
It is, but it's not that, America, in my eyes, is the greatest country in the world. has its faults. There's no doubt about that, but it's significantly better than a lot of places
Yeah.
out there at a minimum. So people will do whatever they can to get here.
Yeah.
You know, it's and to an extent, you know, it's hard for us to put ourselves in their shoes. But you can't blame someone for trying to have a better life. But they got to do it the right way, and they have to make sure that they have the right counsel, because even if it's legitimate, and you know, if you don't have the right stuff or you do something wrong, you could be shooting yourself in the foot. You know, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh, I think we both have a consult to go to.
Okay.
So we might need to wrap
Yes,
this
we'll
up.
we'll see you next time. The myth has been busted. Marriage to a U.S. citizen guarantees lawful status. Not necessarily. You have to go through the process. You need the right proof. You need the right lawyer to help you, and you need to do it the right way. We'll discuss some of those other topics related to it another time. Thank you for stopping by the Wilds Files. The files are open, and we'll see you soon.